Okay, well, good evening, everyone. I'm Marvin Mills. I'm the newly elected chairman of the Racial Equity Committee. I thank you for your confidence in myself. I'd also like to introduce Elissa Andrade, who is our deputy chair, and Dawn Lynch, who is our recording secretary. And you'll hear more from them later. At this time, we like to go ahead and go to the meeting. Elissa, will you go to the next slide, please? So we've had a call to order. Did everyone get a chance to review the July 23rd meeting agenda? Hearing no, we'll go ahead and with consensus, if you raise your hand, we'll approve the agenda for tonight. Just raise your hand, please. Thank you. Don, you get that? You can't see? Don, you're muted, Don.
Thank you. Now I can see, but I can only see 16 people.
Okay.
Are there any holdouts or anyone who is not supporting the minutes? Okay.
Okay.
The agenda.
The agenda is approved then.
Thank you.
We also sent out the minutes for the last meeting that we had in February. Did everyone get a chance to review those? Okay. Are there any additions or corrections or modifications to those minutes? If so, please speak up. Okay, thank you. Alyssa, can you go to the back to the agenda, please? Thank you. At this particular time, we're going to have some comments from our board members that are present. And we'll start with Mr. Mason, and then we'll proceed to. I'm sorry, I'm a little disjointed here this evening, but we'll go ahead, Mr. Mason. You go ahead and you have your comments, and then we'll have comments from the other board meetings as they come on.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much. Good to see everybody, and I'm glad we are able to get back to work, and I appreciate everybody's patience for us to get here. I know there's been a lot going on, and we have been motivated to move, get to work a little bit earlier than today, but things have happened the way they've happened, and it's time for us to get back to work, and appreciate all of you being able to make it tonight. And I just want to remind the public that when this committee was started, the Racial Equity Committee was formed by the previous board, which I appreciate, and we were able to get it passed in June of this year. And at that moment, we decided to get the policy together, which we're going to focus on identifying discrimination or harassment, raising awareness of implicit bias, and eliminating or mitigating racial inequity or its effects across the entire school system. And we are here to help. All of these community members have come together to help our school system be the best that it can for each and every student that's in our school system. And I appreciate all of you volunteering to be on this committee, as well as our staff members who are on the committee. It's a pleasure to be the liaison from the board, and I'm excited that what we're about to do is going to be a game changer in our school system for many of our students. And I would like to remind everybody that the charge and the policy are regulation number 100-09. If you could go to the fcps.org website and look under regulations, you'll find out what the regulation says and what the charge of this group is. And please work with us. Please support us. We have a heavy lift to do, and I know this group is excited to get it done, and I appreciate working with them. And with that, I thank you very much for joining us this evening, and looking forward to what this group is ready to accomplish. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Ms. Barrett, would you like to have some comments, please?
No comments. I am just pleased to listen this evening. Mr. Mason was kind enough to send me the invitation as a board member. He is the liaison, and I'm just very supportive of your work and wanted to listen. Thanks again.
We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. We know that you two board members are engaged in several activities here, trying to get our young folks back into a good educational frame of mind. So we appreciate your support.
Oh, thank you.
At this particular time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Miss Sabrina Nail and Mr. Jay Mason to talk about how to do the email address for the Equity Committee, and to talk a little bit about how the Ombuds kind of works in conjunction with the Racial Equity Committee. So, Mr. Mason and Ms. Nail, please.
Good evening. My name is Sabrina Nail, and there was an email that was set up for Frederick County Public Schools FCPS Social Justice at fcps.org. However, the Racial Equity Committee executive team decided that we should have a specific email for racial equity. So a new email address has been created, the FCPS Racial Equity at fcps.org. This email will be available for anyone to submit anything they would like to have the racial community be aware of. It is a non-confidential email, so it can include public comment, or it can just include a concern. When an email does come in to this email address, there will be an automated response that will respond back to the contact person saying, thank you for contacting the Racial Equity Committee. The email response will include, if it's regards to public comment, that the public comment will be read as long as it's received prior to the beginning of the meeting, and it will be read aloud. If the email is regard to any other concern for the Racial Equity Committee, thank you for sharing that. However, this email address is not a place for possible options for resolution. If someone is looking for possible options for resolution to address the concern, then there's an additional statement that says you can reach out to the Office of the Ombuds so that the Office of the Ombuds can help facilitate or navigate to address a concern if someone has it, or that they want to present to the Racial Equity Committee. Does anyone have any questions in regards to the email address?
I may add that myself and Secretary Lynch will be monitoring that daily, and we'll share anything we have with the group as needed. Mr. Mason.
I just want to make sure we emphasize that this is not confidential. So if you have anything that you would like to share confidentially, please contact the Office of the Ombuds and not this email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mason.
So I also wanted to just explain a little bit about the Office of the Ombuds, because the Office of the Ombuds is an unusual name, but it's an important resource. It's an additional resource available for parents, students, staff, or community members. And the office will listen to any concern. We work to develop options or possibly help navigate and get the party that calls or contacts the office to the right person for possible resolution. The Office of the Ombuds is built around 4 principles, in that it's neutral, so it does not advocate for either the school or for the person contacting. The Office of the Ombuds is advocating for fair process. It's independent. I report directly to the board, and I'm outside of the normal chain of command through the school system with the superintendent. Confidentiality is an important aspect of the Office of the Ombuds, in that confidentiality is kept except in case of harm, or to the extent it's allowed to by law, but I don't share information with anyone else unless the person contacting me gives me permission to do so. And it is an informal way to discuss and look at concerns. So it's not putting the school on notice. It can just, again, be a place where if you need a sounding board or if you want to talk about different options, or again, we can walk through and I can provide talking points to anyone that reaches out that needs assistance. So I've listed the email address and my phone number. And again, if you have a concern in regards to anything FCPS related, feel free to reach out and we'll work together with the school system and with the person contacting to look for options. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elisa Andrade, and I'm the vice chair of our Racial Equity Committee. And the first thing I want to ask for is just a little grace this evening, since I'm working with two computers and control presentation at the same time. So you will be seeing me look off to the side as I'm controlling the presentation with my other computer. I really appreciate all of you, and I'm very appreciative of this position. I want to recognize that we all come from different parts of the community, and many of us don't have experience with sitting on a BOE committee. Most of us realize now we're sort of building the plane as we're flying it, as we're learning the processes and procedures that our county has in place. So recognizing that, we also recognize that together we have to do the learning during these whole group public committee meetings. And we also have to enact change during these meetings at the same time. So realizing that our meetings sometimes will take on two different purposes. I want to acknowledge also too that we're going to be uncomfortable discussing race. And my goal as a vice chair is to help make us feel comfortable in the uncomfortable, because if we don't do that, we're not going to move our county, our schools, and make this a safe and respectful place for our babies. So on the screen, you'll see Maya Angelou's quote, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better." At this point in time, we most certainly know better, and it's our time to act now. And let's talk a little bit about how our Racial Equity Committee what we can do now in order to take some clear anti-racist action.
Excuse me, Madam Vice Chair, point of order. We just had someone come on and join us with the cell phone ending in 11. Can they identify themselves, please? I'm not sure who it is. Will that person with a cell phone ending in 11 please identify yourself? Can you all hear me? I don't know if I'm frozen.
We can, but that person's also on mute, so I don't know if they recognize that they're on mute.
Okay. Cell phone caller, please unmute yourself. Cell phone caller ending in 11. I was not sure if it was a member of the Racial Equity Committee or not.
If for some reason you're able
Probably
to,
not.
Okay. All
May
right.
not be. That's
Okay.
all right. We can move on.
Okay. Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about what we can do now to take some clear anti-racist action. So this is the part of our meeting this evening when we're going to do a little bit of development for ourselves, because a lot of this stuff I know a lot of us are just now getting familiar with. So let's talk a little bit about the process of changing a board policy and making changes in general. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between policies and regulations. And I know that we had spoken a little bit about this in one of our previous meetings, but today we're actually going to dive a little bit deeper. So policies and regulations. The Board of Education sets policy not otherwise controlled by the state and federal laws. Regulations set by the superintendent define the procedures by which the board policy is carried out within the school system. So the superintendent is the one that states the how this is going to happen through the regulations. The policies and regulations are continually revised and updated to comply with current federal and state laws. They are also subject to change without notice, and the Board of Education and FCPS do reserve the right to enforce change immediately, while every effort is made to promptly update these pages in any dispute, and the official policy in effect at the time of the incident will govern and will supersede the language on the website. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to give everyone just a few more seconds to read over that individually and silently to yourselves before we move on into the actual process. So in order for us as community members who are mothers, fathers, teachers, and neighborhood members to access board documents as members of the Racial Equity Committee, this is the pathway we follow. And believe me, I never got on board docs until I started to be on this committee. So this is definitely a pathway that's going to be super helpful to us as we continue to sit as committee members on this committee. So how do we get there? We're going to follow the steps listed here on the slide. You're first going to go to FCPS website. You'll click on the Board of Education tab. You'll click on Board Docs, Policy, and then there'll be a drop down. And all of the policies and regulations are organized really similarly to a library in the Dewey Decimal System. So they're ordered by 100s, 200s, 300s, 400s, and 500s. Does anyone have any questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. So as you would expect, there's a policy about how to change policy. So listed here, and it's not meant for us to read these actual documents. I just wanted to share with everyone where to find them. And as a piece of homework and takeaway, we would truly like for everyone just to review these couple pages because these express a little bit into detail about the policy committee and also policy development and how policy development works and what we go by in FCPS in order to develop policy, revise policy, and what the review process and approval process look like. So it's policy 101.3 as well as policy 114.4. So let's talk a little bit now about how we're going to get started with this work. If we read a policy on board docs and we identify as step one, and I'm going to get on my other computer now. If we identify as step one that there's a change that's needed, what we're going to do next as a committee, and even in your subcommittees, we're going to start to collect the data to support that policy change. So in order for us to enact a change, it's important for us to remember we have to have a basis to start enacting this change that has been needed for years and years. And then we're going to go down to this next step here, which is identify how to address the proposed change. So we're going to offer a few possible actions. Then our board liaison, Jay Mason, will report the proposed changes to the policy committee. And we're going to dive a little further in the next slide. Does anyone have any questions thus far? All right. So since I see no questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to then take you all to a flow chart that will help make this understanding a little easier for everyone. So let's talk a little bit about what happens after we submit our proposed change to the Board of Education. Let's remember, too, that change doesn't necessarily have to be on policy alone. It can also be on staff operating procedures as well as policy, and based upon any other change we feel needed as a committee, again, through the lens of racial equity. Let's take a look at that document now. I'm going to pull it up on my other screen. And let me try to make it bigger so everyone can see. Whoops, come on. All right, there we go. So I'm going to leave it big, zoomed in for now, and then I'll give everyone the broader look of the whole flow chart when we get to the bottom. So what's going to happen first, we saw that change. We saw it needed to happen through our lens of racial equity. We're concerned about whatever it might be through our own committee's lens. What we're going to do first is we're going to give that concern as a subcommittee or whatever subcommittee you're working on to Jay. And as the board liaison, he's going to present the concern to the Board of Education. Our next step is that 3 board members are needed to approve the review of the concern, and the board will determine how to proceed with the review at that point. But what's important for us to remember here is once we give that change proposal to Jay, is that we need at least 3 members of the board to approve that, and then we'll proceed with the review. So from this point, there are 2 different options that we could go to. It'll go to a staff operating procedure review. Again, if it doesn't have to do with policy, if it's staff operations, it would go into the direction on the right of the screen. Or it would go to the chair of the policy committee, who will then receive the proposal and then review it with an attorney. At that point, the chair of the policy committee will bring the proposal to the whole policy committee meeting. At that point, 2 things could possibly happen. It could then go to the Board of Education for a vote, or the policy change proposal is brought to the Board of Education for an actual work session. And this is truly where the Board of Ed is going to sit and they're going to kind of dissect the entire policy change we're proposing or whatever the change might be. So they're going to go through, they're going to review the verbiage, they're going to review the intent and the impact, making sure both the intent and impact match, because we may have one intention, but when the Board of Ed thinks of that broader picture, it may have a different impact. So they want to make sure that both the intent and impact match. And that's something that I'm hopeful, and I know that us as a committee will do and make sure of definitely before we get to this point. So they're going to go and the Board of Ed members are going to go to a work session. They're going to review the entire proposed change. And at that point over here, we have one of 2 options. It'll go through that work session, and then it'll go to the Board of Education for a vote, Or it could be very possible that if there are more questions that the Board of Ed has, they'll send the proposal back to us, back to the policy. I'm sorry, that's a typo. Back to the policy committee with next steps and questions to then result in, again, a possible one more work session. And then the loop from that point might just continue. If it continues to need revisions and work on it, it might continue to bounce back and forth to ensure that the change that we want to begin enacting is having the results that we want to, again, through a racial equity lens. I know that was a ton of information, but again, this is truly the development part of our meeting today, and so that we can all start to learn about the work we're going to do to truly start looking at the policies that FCPS has in place and to really look at them in order to ensure that race is not something that defines next steps for our students. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, this is Jackie Duget. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jackie.
Oh, because I apologize. I had called in before, so I was the 111 number.
Oh, thank you so much for letting us know, Jackie. That's helpful.
No problem. Thank you very much for the presentation. The question that I have is, hopefully it's a general question. I guess my thought is that how can we be assured that the board is looking at the policy, whatever recommendations from our committee with that.
Jackie, I know it's storming outside, but you're breaking up.
If we're not certain that they have that ability to, I'm wondering, so the Board of Education would be responsible for reviewing the policy with whatever recommendations our committee puts forward to make sure they look through a racial equity lens. But I'm just concerned that how do we know that they have that racial equity lens to be able to do that? So that's my concern. So I'm just wondering how that is done if the board that may not have a race, and I may not know, they may have already gone through implicit bias training, diversity and equity training. But I'm just wondering how that would be done and how we could assure that their view is in line with our views in a sense, because they formed a racial equity committee in order to make those recommendations. And hopefully that makes sense.
It does, Jackie. If you don't mind, Elisa, I'll take that. I know our board right now currently is looking at everything in our school system through an equity lens. We've created an equity policy, an educational equity policy, and the board, created this racial equity committee to make sure that we are looking through every aspect of our school system through an equity lens, and especially a racial equity lens. And each policy committee is open to the public to attend. So you can review the documents on board docs when they are posted to make sure that they are in line with the policy recommendation that this committee comes up with. And then if you are able to attend the policy committee, and I think it's once a month. I'm not sure the exact day of the month. It's usually around 11 o'clock in the morning. So you are able to attend the policy committee, and hopefully someone from the committee can attend to make sure that the policy put forward is the one that this committee has presented. Does that answer your question, Jackie?
I think so. I think it just, yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. I know this board is committed, so I appreciate your concern and understand it, but I'm going to tell you that this board is committed, and will put forward your recommendations.
And I appreciate it, and I'm glad that the Board of Education is committed to doing that work, right? But I think a lot of our systems, they're prepared to do the work, but they may not necessarily have the tools. So without having the full you know what I'm saying? Like, unless you've had to deal with it, and now all of a sudden you're dealing with the issue of diversity and equity, if you haven't already had that lens, and it just makes it harder for me to kind of think that, all right, so now you're going to have that lens when you didn't have it before. But I understand there are opportunities for the community to have input, and even the committee to have input if there are concerns that come up as regards to their voting on the policy or making changes.
And I know our staff members are committed also. I know the three that are on here are definitely committed. Jennifer Bigman, Dr. Keith Harris, and Daryl Boffman. I'm not sure if any of you three attend policy meetings, but I know the staff members on here from central office are also committed to equity through a racial lens. If one of you three want to.
No, I would just echo, Jay, what you shared. The board has a very clear educational equity and excellence policy that really truly outlines what we mean by educational equity and excellence. And in that policy, it addresses very specific things that, as matters are brought to you all as a board, that they look through those things through that lens that's outlined in there. And then, Jackie, if the community or we as a racial equity committee would like the board to consider other factors, then there is the opportunity for public comment that provides the board with even a broader lens and perspective about some of the things that's presented to them.
Thank you.
Jay, this is Tia Dowdell. Just to kind of follow up on one of Jackie's points and questions, can you comment on any sort of diversity or equity training or implicit bias training that the board has undergone, or if they have not, are there plans for any of that?
I can't speak for the other board members and what equity training they've been through. I went to an equity symposium this past year that included many state board members, many more board members around the state. So I've been through an equity symposium. I've been to Student Voices at Urbana High School to see how that program has worked. I haven't been through any official training. And I would have to figure out or find out from the other board members what training or what programs they have been through. But I know the Maryland, the Maryland Association of Boards of Education has trainings throughout the year, and I know our board members do attend, but I am not sure how many they have attended over the years they've been on the board, but I will find out for you.
Okay, that's helpful information. I was curious to know if there was something that the board as a group had gone through together, but it sounds like it's more individual in nature if it has happened.
The board has been through a cultural proficiency and implicit bias training as a group.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone. This is Andrea Dardello, and I just wanted to echo Jackie's concern. I think that what I'm hearing is the need for a common vocabulary of what we mean by racial equity. And so I would suggest that there would be training for those of us who are on this committee to familiarize us with the board's definition and have a common vocabulary regarding equity so that when we use this term, we're all on the same page.
Alyssa, you want to answer that? Or we had we've talked about this as an executive committee. Do you want to go ahead, Alyssa, please?
Sorry, I had trouble unmuting myself.
That's okay.
I believe you have a very good point. This is something I've been talking about with the our exec sub committee for the past few weeks. In the education and equity that I've participated in, I truly believe that there's a need for all of us to ensure that we are the drivers of this equity, racial equity lens of our community. And we truly do need to elevate our capacity for understanding the work we're going to do. For me, part of the learning was, and again, starting to read some of these policies and getting my own self familiar with them, because I've never sat on a board or committee like this. So getting myself familiar with them, I learned that whenever we do hold, if we ever hold a training as a whole group or anything, it is considered a public meeting, and we would have to meet as a whole group like this. So that is why I just gave this little mini training for a few minutes just now. But I truly believe that every meeting we have, public meeting we have, we need to do our own development. So it might even be, if everyone's okay with it, that we spend a small amount of time in all of our public meetings developing ourselves and our understanding of this. So I fully agree.
That could be something we add to the agenda for our next meeting. But we did talk about it in our executive committee meetings.
Does anyone else have any further questions about anything we already discussed, or any of the policy, the change processes that I just explained? I'm going to provide some good teacher wait time for a few more seconds.
This is Sabrina. I just wanted to add that in the chat, I have listed the policy for equity, educational equity and excellence. So just a little more homework to add to everyone so you can see the definitions and the policies that are already in place from the Board of Education.
If I could add one thing, the board training for cultural proficiency and implicit bias was in, I think, 2017, before I joined the board, and several of our board members, when they attend our National School Board Association, do attend equity sessions, and particularly with race.
And I just want to add that the board may not approve. Yes, can you hear me?
Could you identify yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Daryl Boffman, Executive Director of Public Affairs. I just wanted to add that, please, I want to set the right expectations. Everything that we submit may not be approved by the board or the policy committee, but it's extremely important that whatever we submit, we do due diligence, provide facts and sufficient backup data to support our position. And I think the better job we do from that standpoint, the higher probability that what we submit will be approved by the board. But we have to know that everything we submit may not get approved by the board. But it's on us to do the best job possible to educate the board and the policy committee on why we believe what we're submitting is important as a change to our school system.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Mason, Mr. Boffman, or Dr. Harris? Hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you. So at this point in time, I want to talk a little bit about the subcommittees. We actually, in the executive subcommittee, discussed some of the input that we had received from our previous meetings, and we actually segmented our subcommittees into to 6 groups. One, early childhood, elementary, middle, and high school education. The second group is gifted, talented, and highly able special education and English learner programs. The third one was hiring, recruitment, retention, professional development, and staff. The fourth was school climate and discipline data. The fifth was extracurricular activities. And the third, and the sixth one was cultural sensitive and inclusive curriculum and instruction. And we sent out of course, a survey sheet with all you kind of voted on what you like to have your primary, secondary, and tertiary committees that you like to serve on. Needless to say, we couldn't give everybody their first choice, but we try to give everybody their first or second choice, and I think we did that in a good way. We thought that the early childhood, elementary, middle school, high school education was a very key committee. Gifted, talented was a key committee. Of course, hiring, recruitment, all of them were very, very important. We didn't get very much activity in pool for the extracurricular activities, but several of our folks stepped up to the plate and says they'll take those on. One of the things, if you look at this now, you'll see who's on those committees, and we'll give those committees some type of access so that they can actually have some meetings on their own. But what I'd like to do is have at least for each of those subcommittees to have someone that can be the recorder and bring back information back to the main group when we have report outs after this meeting. So from now on, we'll have a report out from each of the subcommittees to explain what they think is very important, if they've had any traction, if they're having any resistance, so that the majority of the major committee can actually support what they're trying to do. We'll also be able to, we have our board liaison who can direct us in the proper direction for obtaining data. Of course, Mr. Harris and Mr. Boffman can also, and Ms. Nail can also assist with that. So I think we've got some good points where we can actually obtain the data that we need to affect change. Is there any questions on how the subcommittees are assigned? Is there anyone that would like to be on another subcommittee? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
This is Serena Lissette. Hi.
Hi, Serena.
I'd be willing to help out with the extracurricular activities subcommittee
Okay.
as well. So
Okay. All righty. Dawn, who our secretary, she'll adjust that and we'll add you to both those committees. Okay. So you're going to double dip.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Marv, I just wanted to add that Jennifer Bingman is also on the committee, and her job has to deal with the data. So she's going to help us out tremendously also with collecting data and providing information.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate that.
Jennifer, would you mind real quick just what your title is and what you do for the school system?
Sure. So I'm the Director of System Accountability and School Improvement. And within our department, we certainly are the data keepers. We have the eSchool system that holds our student information system. We also take care of local assessment. So we have all the local assessment data. And then we also really work with the part of the department does our research and as well the surveys. So I have access to all the data that we would need. And so anything that you would need, I would be happy to help and support. And I just do want to say that we very much make sure that anytime we have data and data is available for teachers, that they're able to break down and to look at the different student groups. It's important that we pay attention to that. And so we do really focus on making sure that teachers have that data available to them and can really make sure that they're able to provide for each and every student. And so it's certainly something that we train and we really work to help people to have that available. So I look forward to being able to support each of the different groups here.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it.
Marv, I did want to add that our subcommittees were created under the policy 101 organization of the board, and where we have racial equity committee listed, these came right out of that policy. These are our charges. So just so that everyone knows, we took each of our charges and made them legislative subcommittees.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Hi, this is Andrea Dardello again.
Yes, Andrea.
Hi, I've done extensive work with culturally responsive teaching for faculty development. And so I would really like to be on that committee. I'll also be teaching a section of English for college-ready students from Frederick County Public Schools this semester. So if it's possible that I can switch committees.
I think we can see that. Yeah, we'll ask someone that's on the on that particular committee to see if they would like to exchange with you. Both those committees are very important. So, is anybody would like to volunteer right now to go to the School Climate and Discipline Committee from the Cultural Sensitive and Inclusion Curriculum and Instruction Committee? Or if not, you can email myself and Alyssa and Dawn, and we can move you around if you want to think about it.
This is Jasmine Gulati on the phone, and I'm unable to view the subcommittees. Can someone guide me as to how I can view the subcommittee memberships?
Sure. Dawn, can you email her the slideshow?
Who is speaking?
This is Jasmine Gulati, and I'm on the phone. 1239 are the last 4 digits.
Okay.
I wrote down everything else that everyone was speaking from the slideshow, but I cannot view the subcommittee memberships.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we do have a Sabrina as indicated that she would switch. Excuse me, Tia Dowdle. She will actually switch with Andrea. So Tia will now be on the School Climate and Discipline Data Subcommittee, and Andrea, you'll be over on the Cultural Sensitive and Inclusion Curriculum and Instruction.
Thank
Tia,
you so much.
very much. Thank you very much for volunteering. And now we'll kind of go into the charge for each of the legislative subcommittees. There was actually a group leader for, we split the subcommittees into one of the executive committee members. And so Dawn had the first 2 committees, I had the second 2 committees, and Alyssa had the third 2 committees. So if we'll go to the next slide, please. And I think that's Dawn. Is that Dawn? Oh, okay, I'm first. Okay, so in hiring, recruitment, and retention of employees in the school climate and discipline data, we had a very robust conversation, and it would have taken me about 8 slides to tell you everything that we talked about and thought was important. But I took about 4 key topics that should be addressed, and we thought the subcommittee should be addressed, and of course the hiring strategies to incorporate more people of color as teachers, counselors, and school administrators. Professional development of all staff for what they call a mindset change. Training on interactions with students and staff of color. Holding students accountable and staff accountable for inappropriate language and behavior. One of the key ones was that all Frederick County school locations be safe places, both physically and mentally. Okay. And we heard over and over again about macro and microaggressions. And we'll hear more about that a little bit later from some of our speakers. And of course, equal treatment for all students in disciplinary actions based on multiple data points and the use of restorative practices rather than punitive practices. Questions on any of those? And we'll actually give you some more slides maybe next time with all the different issues that were raised at these 2 subcommittees. Any questions on what was presented here tonight on this?
Hi, this is Katie Erickson. I was just wondering if we might be able to, under all FCPS locations should be safe spaces, could we also talk about them being brave spaces to have those vulnerable conversations as well?
Oh, okay, sure. We can do that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then I just didn't know if we wanted to talk about, because I saw equal treatment, but then also talking about the equitable component as well, and just helping people identify the differences between those two words.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll take that under advisement. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any other input? Please, folks, these are your subcommittees and not mine or the executive committee. So please give us your thoughts. If not right now, you can actually email us later on or do whatever you need to do. But let us know if you think we need to add something, take something out. Katie made a good point about the use of specific words, and we'll take all that under advisement. Bring it back to the committee. All righty. All right. I think this is Dawn. This is your committee, and you're on mute.
Yes. So I worked with. Thank you. I worked with the elementary, middle, and high school data and special education, gifted, talented, ELL groups, those two groups. And we were tasked to talk about two things in particular. So the key topics that we want to address that came out of our meeting that was to hire and retain a diverse workforce of educators here in Frederick County Public Schools. We are fully aware that there aren't many graduates in the School of Education. Not many people want to become educators. However, for those that are, we want to actively seek out and recruit and retain those educators that look like the students that are sitting in front of us in our schools. The other thing we discussed, we want to have racial stereotypes and misconceptions addressed with PL for staff. We know that we've had cultural training for our staff, but we want to also make sure we equip our staff with what they need to do when situations arise, as opposed to not doing enough. So we want to make sure that they are fully equipped with things that they should look for and ways in which to act. Also, that universal implementation. So whereas one school may do one thing and a different school do something different, we want it to be universal in its look. The other thing we discussed was the use of community liaison positions in schools. We know that there are some, but not many schools have them. But perhaps having more people from our community engaging with our schools might be a help for some of the things that we have happening. Also, we wanted to discuss making verbal and written communication a priority with our interpreting and translation services, especially in our Spanish population that is outside of English, our largest demographic. And so we want to make sure that we're making our meetings and our things that we pass out in a way so that everyone has access and can fully participate and have their voice heard. Also, we talked about offering flexible grading systems in place and flexible deadlines in place as it relates to virtual learning or virtual and hybrid learning. The other thing we talked about was possibly setting up Google Meet sessions for parents, because we know that parents often help their child with work, but they may be uninformed or not sure about how to do certain things. So if we offered some Google Meet sessions, that might help bridge that divide when it comes to virtual or hybrid learning. Also, the suggestion was maybe having pre-recorded TV programs of lessons for parents to view. So just an idea. We really thought big and thought long and hard about this. And the last thing we talked about was informing our community of the community partnerships we have. For example, we partner with Comcast, and that would be beneficial in a time of virtual learning because it could help with such technology needs like setting up your internet or helping you with free access or a reduced amount you're paying for internet access. So we want to make that learning accessible if that is what we have for the moment because of COVID-19. We want to make sure that all our populations have a way to access an education with Frederick County Public Schools. So these are the things that we discussed in our group.
Thank you, Dawn. Any questions from on Dawn's two groups?
Hi, this is Jenny Ryan. I have a couple of questions for this committee. In the interest of using the same language as discussed earlier, and we're referring to students here as gifted and talented. And then in Frederick County Public Schools, we refer to them as highly able learners. So I don't know if that is something to be concerned about, but that's just something I noticed. And then also in that same vein, the Young Scholars Program is something that some of our schools are piloting, but we don't have it in all of our schools, and that's an opportunity for all students to experience the highly able learner instruction. So students who maybe aren't identified in elementary school can experience that. So I think that might be something that this committee might consider, because I think it's a really interesting program, and I'd be happy to talk with you guys about it. And then the other thing was translation, and I know you put in Spanish here, but as an English learner teacher, I think we want to say more than just Spanish, because we do have a lot of families and students in our county who are English learners who are not Spanish speakers, and we certainly have more Spanish speakers than any other group, but we do have students who speak other languages.
That's very true. I'm also an English learner teacher. Very true on that. Also, I did jot down about the Young Scholars Program, so I will definitely reach out to you, Jenny, about that. And yes, you are right. It is the Highly Able Program, not Gifted and Talented, and it's not ESOL. We will make those revisions. Thank you.
Other questions or comments for Dawn? Well, thank you for your feedback. Okay, Alyssa, it's on you now.
Okay, so the two subcommittees that I met with and facilitated was the extracurricular activities subcommittee, as well as the culturally sensitive and inclusive curriculum and instruction subcommittee. We, as the several other subcommittees, had a lot of talk and very rich discussion. What I posted here on this slide is what there was a lot of energy around. So we talked a lot about student voice data being needed to provide us some input on our curriculum to see what changes we can start making based upon the voice of our students. We also discussed that more field trips truly are needed that focus on racial equity and injustices that have occurred to people of color. We also wanted to talk a little bit, and I see a common theme in the last few slides and subcommittee meetings about the translation of documents being needed in order to ensure access for all. We also talked a lot about more professional development being needed for staff truly at all levels within the school system. And we also talked about, similarly to the previous subcommittee that presented, was supporting families during this distance learning time period. and possibly having in-person trainings, obviously at a socially distanced and safe distance for our families, but having family nights where our families could come out and safely learn how to use Chromebooks and learn how to use the technology. We did discuss how important it was to actually define providing access and what access truly means. And that when we provide access, often we see that as providing the hotspot or providing the Chromebook, when access also includes teaching our families how to use it as well. We also talked a lot about having equity language within FCPS's mission statement. We also talked about translating board docs, which I know has been a big discussion in our executive subcommittee as well, and the importance of, most especially with our own committee, making this something that we truly pave the way for within translating our own documents. We also, too, like the previous subcommittee, talked about the verbiage that we use in FCPS, such as I believe it was Ms. Ryan that had just said, talked a little bit about the highly able terminology. And we need to think about how those terms make parents feel when our children are called highly able and other children are called lower level. We talking a little bit more about that verbiage through an equity lens. And I really want to thank the subcommittees that I worked with, because they really, the discussion was amazing. And I'll turn it over to you now, Mr. Mills.
Please call me Marv. When I'm called Mr. Mills, I'm in trouble. All righty. Are there any questions about anything that happened with any of the subcommittees? I think you as the committee of the whole see that there's some very common thoughts coming from all the different subcommittees about certain things. You know, we heard a lot about making sure of justice. We heard a lot about ensuring that there's adequate translation of documents and information so that everybody understands what's going on. I think everybody heard about professional development. So there's some recurring themes that I think that we can address as a committee and also as a subcommittee. So thank you very much for your input, for all those who participated, and I appreciate that. Dawn, if you go to the next slide, please. Over the last several weeks, there's been a lot of current events surrounding racial equity in Frederick, not only for the public school system, but also just for the city, the county. And so we have a few folks that we are invited to come and talk to us tonight, just so we can get their ideas on things. And all these folks that are going to speak tonight have been within the county school system for haven't graduated that long. They're all what I would call young folks compared to me, as I'm an old buzzard. But I think we want to hear from them, and so we can hear some of those things that they've been very concerned about, and I think they were traumatized over those things. And so we need to hear those things. So as a committee, we can actually think about how to address those issues, which really reflect on a lot of the things that the subcommittees were addressing. So our first guest speaker is Ms. Sarad Hassan. And Sarad, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and you can have the floor now.
Hi, yeah. Thank you for inviting me. I would actually like to give the floor to Connor to speak on behalf of End Racism FCPS.
All righty. Okay. We have also on the line is Mr. Connor Laughlin. And Connor, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello there. My name is Connor Laughlin, and I'm currently the one of the representatives for the End Racism FCPS petition. As a member of the Frederick community, the void of leadership and very explicit condemnation of racism, not just in a performative and abstract way, but actually addressing the lived experiences of the hundreds of thousands of children who have passed through FCPS. It prompted a pretty massive and like visceral community response. We have more than 2,500 assignees at this point. This really came out of the recognizing that each person who signed the petition and spoke at the town hall that at this point has 2,400 views. Each of their stories are valid and taken to heart. And it speaks to the fact that these experiences, most of the time, they did not have the proper administrative channels to address them. And beyond that, many of those who have addressed their issues are met with disproportionately punitive measures. So we can't have a conversation until all of their experiences are heard, all of their testimony. Our group has now gathered anonymously and sensitively hundreds of experiences, and we look forward to hosting more town halls. This group formed out of that void of vocal and transparent leadership from the eyes of our community. And it was formed out of a vital need to direct energy from the people of Frederick County towards a safer space where they could have all of their concerns validated. The unique grassroots approach to which we are addressing this problem has resulted in a far more rapid response than we feel a lot of the institutional bodies within FCPS have accomplished in a much longer span of time. We have had we've had active working groups for all of the kinds of things that you all are working on, including policy proposals, administrative protocols, and curriculum. By not excluding any community member, we have been able to garner and use the talents of graphic designers, of local activists, of local educators. And we look forward to accomplishing even more at a much more rapid pace, because as you all can probably see, this movement is predominantly being led by those who were most recently affected by racism in the FCPS system. So we will be working independently of your group, but we hope to prove that our thoughtful and well-researched policy proposals will be supported by the Board of Education, especially given the fact that we will have thousands of people who are excited and willing to both lobby the board members and seek rapid change. So, thank you.
Thank you, Connor. Sarad, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. I could add on a little bit to what Connor had
Thank
said.
you.
It was very well summarized, the efforts of our group, especially considering that, our petition on anti-racism was something that came into the works in very early in June, and the rapid response that we got from the community really indicated to us that we needed to have a community-involved organization, grassroots organization that would allow for everyone to be a part of the group. Youth who are currently in FCPS system, there are middle schoolers and high schoolers who are signed on to our petition, and people who graduated from FCPS in 1972 and like earlier even, who have expressed instances of traumatic racism. And in our town hall, you can see that in the video that is found on the End Racism FCPS page about our town hall, there are folks who sent in these testimonies saying that they were placed on hit lists for the nature of being Black for their race, or the KKK would be spray painted on their lockers, or being called the N-word in literally every setting that could be ever possible on FCPS grounds. And I think given a lot of these experiences from people, it is important that when there are institutional bodies, such as the Racial Equity Committee, there should be ways for, like as Connor had mentioned, like we will continue to work independently of you all, but there should be ways for you guys to include in your bylaws or otherwise a minimum number of students from FCPS who could be a part of the group. And I think it's unfair to only have a very small number of students a part of the group, if there are any at all. And just given that these are experiences like extracurricular, like the 6 committees that you all have, I think that having youth who could give insight and things like that is really important. And I don't really see that. And I think that with our group, we have been working due diligence towards including everyone and working towards directly going to the Board of Education. And yeah, I think that we're definitely interested in actively being anti-racist, and we've already had like conversations within our own group about a vision statement and what our own shared values are. And we've done this in a very rapid response sort of way. And I think even something that should be considered by the Racial Equity Committee is, do you all have the same definition of racial equity? Do you all have the means to include community voices outside of just like a once a month or however frequently space for public comment? Because I think that constant community engagement is necessary in order to create progress. And I think that our group has been doing a really good job about that. And as Connor had mentioned, yeah, we're already broken into our own working groups addressing many different issues, similar to the ones that you all have included, but also otherwise, that go into the root of what can be done to help with the healing of students, what can be done to address the root problems that students are facing in regards to racism, but just what can be done in general to help these kids. So yeah, that is, I know that took a little bit longer than 5 minutes, but appreciate that you gave us the space to share our thoughts.
Rod, thank you very much. Is there anybody else from your group that would like to speak?
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. I would mention to our committee, if you're not seeing their town hall meeting, it was very powerful. And I would encourage all of us to review that, look at it, and take that as some context for what our recent graduates and current students are experiencing in our school district. Serena, next slide. Excuse me, listen, next slide, please.
Marv, this is our last slide.
Oh, it is?
Do we want to
Okay.
move into public comments?
No,
Yes,
I think we need to go back one.
Whoops.
Oh.
You were going to allow the committee members to share.
Oh,
about
sure,
the
yeah.
current event.
Any committee members want to speak to anything that they've observed with any of the current events, anything you need to bring up that you think is germane to what we have been tasked to do by the Board of Education as far as racial equity?
So this is Jackie Duge again. I guess
Yes.
one thing I was just wondering is where in the discussion we could fit the issue of the mental health aspects, social emotional aspects regarding. I mean, I know we're addressing racial equity in terms of education, but I think to not also talk about potential mental health impacts or how we can help support social emotionally young people as well as families in the discussion.
If I can add to Jackie, that's something I spend a lot of time thinking about in my professional job. I'd be happy to lead a conversation around what is necessary to bring about trauma responsive and trauma informed practices to help with healing. That's something I'd be happy to support in a future meeting and kind of walk us through, some basic considerations we should have in our minds as we go about doing this work.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that.
Hi, this is Daryl Boffman again, Executive Director of Public Affairs. And I'd just like to make a comment to the End Racism FCPS group. First of all, thank you for the work that you're doing. It's great to see young people stand up to have their voices heard about what has not been done right. And I would also suggest that you consider our group, because what you will find within our group are people who have been fighting this battle for years. For example, Dr. Harris and Jay Mason and myself, we've been a part of an organization called Eliminating Achievement Gap for 14 years. I've served on a board for 10 years, and I can tell you stories about what we dealt with back during that time and what changes and how to affect change successfully. And I think we should work together and not in separate vacuums, because I think there are things that we can learn from you as young people who are in today's situation, and things that you can learn from us. And if we put our heads together, I think we can be more successful in addressing the issues, not just with what we're seeing, but using the proper channels to try to get change to what is occurring. And I know I haven't been reached by anyone in the organization, but I would gladly speak with you about my experiences and what I've seen work and doesn't work. And again, because we are inside of the system, there may be some things that we can help you to understand to make it a more successful fight for change. And I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Daryl. Other discussions from the committee members?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Ivania Amador. It's nice to see everybody again, at least a little bit. I don't know if my camera's working or not. It says it is, but I don't know, so sorry if it's not. I wanted to hop on really quick and just share a lot of the current events that has been, especially surrounded in the news, has been very black and white. And I just want to reiterate, coming from an immigrant background, I just want to make sure that we are also considering racial equity in terms of ethnicity and looking at Hispanic and Latinx populations within our school systems, the families and the children. I don't know if anybody watched the 287G audit with the county council last night. It was a very for me, traumatic experience to listen through 5 hours of a very divided community within the town, right here where I'm living and raising my children. It's very scary for me to think that I am sending my kids to school where I don't know if they're actually being accepted after hearing the feedback publicly like that. So I just want to make sure that as the Racial Equity Committee, we are also considering not just racial issues within Black and white, but also looking beyond that. And I really appreciate the End Racism group that's has taken that into consideration. I know we look at ELL, but remember that not an immigrant, they're different. So just identifying the differences between those two populations and really looking at equity for them as well.
Thank you, Ivania. Appreciate that. Other questions or discussions or comments from committee members?
If I may. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Jenny Ryan. I just wanted to mention that I heard the idea of training at every level of our meeting this evening, starting with the board and through all staff who work for FCPS. And then I heard the End Racism FCPS talk about listening to the students. And the most powerful PL that I've ever participated in has been when students share their experiences directly with the adults who are trying to learn and make change. So I think if we can somehow incorporate that into our plan, I think that would be extremely powerful to just give the students an opportunity to speak. If that means, we change our bylaws, allow them to become part of this group, or simply incorporate them into some of the PL that is developed, I think it would be really beneficial.
Thank you, Jenny. See, any other speakers there? Somebody's on the phone there. I can't recognize that phone number, but it ends with 39.
Yeah, this is Jasmine Gulati, and if I may just offer a thought here. Aligning with the discussion of current events, I've noticed that, of course, maybe because news outlets have less time to project the entire story or bring context to it, many times there's a vilification of the events that have occurred, whether they surround protesting or speaking out. And I think when it comes to our student population, when they see that and when they see those projections and they see the difficult time given to those who speak out, at least I know in my own household, perhaps the teenagers tend to sometimes, who are already struggling with issues of self-esteem, tend to withdraw a bit further on speaking out where controversy follows. So I was wondering if there is something we can do within the school system to address the fact that the outcome or the consequences or the reactions should not determine their ability to speak out, just the issue itself and its importance for their own future, and that they should, as I think someone mentioned before, yes, safe and brave spaces, mental health and social emotional health, but I think there needs to be a direct dissipation of the vilification that seems to occur of those who speak out on controversial issues. My son, Taj Gulati, when he looks at a lot of this news and he's very current on his events, he was watching one of these events the other day, and there was no context placed by the people describing the events or the most dramatic highlights of those events, protests. And he wanted to make a comment on his social media feed. He has quite a few followers. And the amount of trolling that occurred, of course, support occurred, but trolling occurs. And just over the years, because he's tall, dark, and has been called terrorist or curry boy, things like that. So over the years, he's developed a resiliency that goes beyond his years. And when he sees these events and then he tries to make public comment on it, he's now ready. He has the shield of genuine self-awareness, knowing that he's good, knowing he's speaking out for good, and knowing he's using a civilized, positive method of perhaps eliciting discussion on an event that might be controversial. So he's able to deal with this, but it's not easy. It's not easy for him. And I think that it's not easy for many students who might want to come and speak out, who might want to even report things, but they feel that what follows any kind of talk such as that is vilification of some kind. So I was wondering what your comments are on that. Thank you.
Does anybody want to speak to what Ms. Gulati said? Hearing none, I'll speak up a little bit. I'm in total agreement. I think one of the things that's happened in our society is that the bullies get the pulpit, and the calm ones don't get the accolades they should. Part of what I would expect the school district to do is to ensure that every student understands they're empowered to speak up against anything they think that's wrong. to encourage the First Amendment. Additionally, though, there needs to be education on how to project yourself in the proper way. And I applaud your son for going about that in a very professional way. We need to make sure that all our students can do that. And also we need to encourage, and I've heard this a lot of times, but my father, who's a longtime professor, always talked about radical inclusion. And to
Right.
me, that meant that that was everybody, and it didn't make any difference to your ethnicity, your religion, your background, your socioeconomic background, any of that. You were a human being, and you deserve respect, and you deserve to be heard for what you are, and you weren't judged by anything other than your conduct, and what you could provide to the community. And until we get to that point, we're going to have struggles. I would tell you that, as part of looking at our bylaws, we may want to look at if folks are trolling him and it's inappropriate, then we should be looking at board policies and regulations about retaliation. There's some very
Right.
serious laws from federal laws about retaliation. I'm not
Right.
sure what the school board has for theirs, but but we can actually look. That's something we may want to look at. You also mentioned about training. Especially having our young folks have and as part of curriculum, learning how to speak in public. And that should
Right.
start early on, very, very early on. You've done a very good job with your son, but some folks don't have that opportunity or that skill set at home. But I think the public school system should help address that. All our students should be able to articulate themselves both in written and verbal forms at an early age.
Right.
And that's it's just it's some of the things I think we need to do. And I'm going to stop there because I could go on all night about my
Thank
philosophies,
you.
because having a whole family of educators, I really understand what you parents are going through. So
Thank you. Thank you.
any other subcommittee or committee discussions on about the current events going on in the county? Wow.
I guess
Okay.
I would just like
Go ahead,
I'd just
Jay.
like to reiterate Jackie's point about the mental health of our Black and Brown students right now. Things are heightened in our country. Things are heightened in the world, and they're seeing a lot of things that many of us have not seen. I know I have not seen some of the types of actions that are going on in our country. My father has. My elders in my family have, but this is something that I'm dealing with young kids, and I know that there are a lot of families out there dealing with it. And I just want to make sure that we are making sure that our kids are taken care of through a mental health lens, and making sure that we are able as a committee and a school system to say, we support you and we're going to help you through this, and make sure that our community is welcoming, and do everything we can to make sure that each and every one of our students is doing okay, and just making sure that we're checking up on them and emphasize the mental health of our community right now.
If I can just add on to that, one of the things we've been talking about a lot in the field of work I'm in is that kind of rubber band being stretched beyond capacity. There's so much going on right now. COVID's piling on, the stress of having to learn in a completely different structure. There's so much right now that people are stretched beyond the max in many cases. So we need to be able to think how we can hold that and help people hold all of that. There's no easy answers because we're all in very uncharted territory. But I think we want to make sure that we're very cognizant of all the many very high stakes stressors young people and their families are experiencing right now. And again, it's new. We're we're building the airplane as we're flying it and trying to figure out how we can build resiliency in a time where there's just so much uncertainty and volatility. So I really, just have us think as broadly as possible about all the stressors and how those stressors are compounding upon, Black, Indigenous, and other people of persons of color, because it disproportionately is affecting Black, Indigenous, Latinx communities. So we really want to make sure that we are putting that, holding that all in our hearts at the same time, and making sure we're taking appropriate actions in response to that.
Thank you, Sarah. Very powerful. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Other discussions?
Marva,
I think Serena's next.
Okay. Hi, I just wanted to just bring up a discussion about having guidance for our students, not only with mental health, but also with opportunities for our students of color, and just talking about having access to different opportunities for our students of color, specifically in terms of scholarships in college and in the job field, opportunities that are not necessarily afforded to our students of color, and that could be in our county, such as connections with other organizations, such as the Posse Foundation, which is a great organization that works with Montgomery County, Prince George's County, but do not have a connection to Frederick County. And that's something that our students of color could really use, full scholarship to college, something that for our students of color. So connecting those and making sure that the guidance counselors in our schools know of opportunities to shed light to, especially to schools like our most diverse schools, but also to students of color in predominantly white schools, so that they have access and knowledge of the opportunities that they have that they don't even know about. So I wanted to make sure that we can emphasize the need for that, especially in the subcommittee that has to deal with highly abled students, just making sure that they're aware of those and making those aware for guidance counselors, and a conversation we should have together.
Thank you, Serena. There was someone else that wanted to speak?
Marv, I did want to respond a little bit more to the previous comment that was made about our fellow committee member's son, and how he had, backlash on social media. I think it's important in FCPS that we start to think about how we can support our students of color as far as building up their communities. Such as, I know in Montgomery County Public Schools, we have Minority Scholars Program, which are strong voices for our students of color, and why don't we have it up here, and how can we bring an organization like that up here? I believe that organizations like that will support your son and also give him and others the strategies to definitely see inequities and to feel that they're in a safe space and in a space that they're going to feel supported in when they're with their peers. And I just want to bring that up. If there's something that our committee can start looking into doing as far as supporting our students of color, and giving them that safe space and the tools to combat injustices when they see them in that safe space and feel confident about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Alyssa. Sure, go ahead.
If I may respond, Alyssa, thank you so much for your sympathy in that sort of difficulty that's experienced by, I'm sure, millions of our brown and Black children. I just wanted to quickly comment about what I saw worked, and how happy I think many of us would be if that was made an official part of our school system, which is the debate program. My daughter, who is 7 years older than my son, she was part of an informal debate program. We had to go out seeking it everywhere, including Ellicott City, representing a school that had it officially, then non-officially, unofficially. So it became a very big patchwork of an attempt to create an environment for children to learn how to articulate, and as you mentioned, to learn how to gain those tools of researching, supporting your point, putting it forward, and having it heard in a manner that would not be just brushed away because it was not presented accurately. And so she learned that. She learned that tremendously well, became a regional champion, and got into a tremendous school and had opportunities because of her ability to speak persuasively, to speak accurately and to speak calmly. And I think if a debate environment is brought back in the system, I completely agree that we need to provide our children the tools with which they can articulate their emotions through the conduit of intellectual points. And once they are able to do that, once we can bridge that gap between how frustrated they might be feeling and how rivetingly they can present their point, once we bridge that gap and enable them to bridge their gap, that will help them throughout their life. I know from my daughter's experience, who's now 5 years out of college already graduated, how much that has helped her. So I would propose that we look at some kind of official debate program. We encourage our students to join, and we enable them to gain the skills that will last them a lifetime in terms of being able to articulate. I think that's why my youngest son is able to articulate. He saw his sister do it. So I would love your feedback on that.
Speaking from the extracurricular activities committee, I think that's a great idea. I love the suggestion. So I think we'll add that to our list of things we can work on. Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other discussions for the good of the body?
Yep. One last thing for our special ed group, just to make sure that our Black and Latino students aren't overlooked or underlooked when you're doing your work, and that our special ed kids do not get labeled as having bad behavior, and to make sure that we're looking through the ADHD and autism spectrum, and that our Black kids and brown kids, if they are identified as special ed, that they're not just getting in trouble, that they are getting the help they need and the resources they need to stay in school and learn what they're supposed to do. Thank you.
And Jay, that goes a long way to hiring the right kind of people for those particular counselor and special ed positions that understand the real needs of some of our more seriously challenged students. Just to have that title of counselor doesn't mean you're a counselor. You have to have the drive, experience. You got to really understand where folks are coming from, and I think that's part of counseling. Is also part of the discipline. You know, as you mentioned, you know, a lot of our kids are deemed as special education, and that's because they're troubled. That doesn't necessarily mean they're special education. You know, we're not looking at the root cause of the issue. And one of the key reasons, I think, is because we do not have counselors and teachers of color that are actually interacting with these students every day. And so until you get that type of person involved in the day-to-day lives of students, you're going to have issues like that. So I think that's one of the things we really should address, you know. So having a wife that's a school counselor, I really understand that very, very well, you know. So you got to have a special passion to be an effective school counselor. So yeah, thank you. Other discussions? Going once.
Before we go to public comment, just want to make sure that I'm not sure who's going to be the leader or whoever decides to send an email, but the subcommittees going to have to get together and probably Zoom in your small groups and talk. So maybe we should just, Marv, you should just appoint one person to send out the email in each group. Okay. Just to get the conversation started so they can start meeting.
Okay, I can do that. I'll do that a little bit later tonight, so before I go to bed tonight. So I can do that. And then that group can get together. Jay, can we get a setup so that the subcommittees can do a group meet, or do we need to have them just go ahead and just meet without going through the school's site?
They can use their own. They don't have to go through the
okay.
That would make us have 6 staff members on site.
Gotcha. Okay.
Trying to navigate each group and send out invites. So each whoever has a Zoom account or a Google Meet can go ahead and set up in the small committees and work together.
Okay, all righty. Alyssa, you and I and Dawn, maybe after this, we'll hang on just a minute and we'll try to see who we think can do it for each of our subcommittees. Okay. And okay. Anything else? For public comment tonight, we only had one email, and I'm going to read this in verbatim. And the submitter's name is Cindy Rose. And quote, "I am writing today because a member of the Board of Education called me a racist for daring to question having this meeting virtually. My exact words were, I want to be on record stating my disapproval of this entire process. Parents have the right to sit in the room where our children's futures are being discussed. We have the right to face you while you sit there and discuss how all white people are inherently racist and biased toward people of color. We have the right to face you while you say all the minorities are hopeless victims and capable of working their way out of poverty or bad choices. For this, I was accused of using racist language and offered an opportunity to be educated on my offense. This is how you want to talk to our teachers and students? It is unacceptable. I am tired of hearing everyone has an implicit bias and that inferring that it is harmful, dangerous, or aimed at specific segment of society. Teach our children to read, not hate. Focus on math and science, not skin color." And again, the submitter's name was Cindy Rose. We will put this into the minutes also so that that's there for everybody to look at. I have no other comments. I imagine we'll get some more next time because our email site will be up, and so we'll share those. If there's anything very, very germane that I think we need to share, we'll immediately share it with the entire group. Otherwise, we will just share it with the group when we meet again. But I'm sure there'll be somebody that'll have some something that maybe is very germane that we need to be afforded to committee members before the next time we meet. Before we go, I'd like to. Is everyone good with a Thursday evening about 6? The fourth, is it what's this? The fourth Thursday? Is that right, Dawn? The fourth Thursday? Yeah, you're silenced there, Dawn.
I thought I clicked it. I'm sorry. I think it is the fourth Thursday. I am not good with the fourth Thursday, however, as your secretary.
Okay.
I'm not good with the first or the last. The first and last Thursdays don't work for me.
Okay. What about the third Thursday?
That works.
Is anyone that has issues with maybe on the third Thursday from 6 to around 8 o'clock, no more than 2 hours?
I do.
Jay, you're never available, so.
I think we may have to do a poll again.
Okay. Well, what we'll do is we'll send out a small survey, and everybody we'll look at what the majority can go with, and hopefully that everybody can join. And as Alyssa mentioned, and I think Dawn mentioned, this is recorded, so we can actually share this in case anyone needs to go back and look at the meeting. Is there anything else for the good of the body tonight?
I have a question, if it's okay.
Sure.
Are these meetings being, other than just posted on the website? I know they're being recorded. So are they live recorded or posted after?
They're actually posted after, but it's actually being recorded now. It's actually live recorded. So I don't think we're Jay can help me with this. I don't think we have the technology to actually have this on the county school system television site. Do we, Jay? I don't think we can do that right now. So
we do not. Daryl, do you want to take this or?
Certainly. Again, this is Daryl Boffman, Executive Director of Public Affairs. Our current arrangement does not allow us to record all the committee meetings over our television channel. We are looking into a new contract with the provider Swagit. As well, we're looking into some new technologies that will enhance our ability to not just have more meetings recorded, but also have various languages in closed captioning, as well as for the hearing impaired. So we're looking into providing the necessary equipment to enhance our communication capabilities and our contract to be able to provide this type of service in the future.
That's great. Thank you, Daryl.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Daryl.
Can I follow up with just another really quick question? I just
Sure,
am
Vanya.
happy to hear that we have, like, we're looking into the access issue piece of it. I also just wanted to know, like, are we announcing at all, like, how is the community aware of when we're meeting? Like, is there a find out first, or is it they have to go online and know, they have to look it up themselves?
Well, right now, I think we're it's announced on our on the school board's website right now. That's the only venue that I know of, unless Jay or Daryl know of something else we're doing right now.
So the board secretary actually sends out board-related meeting notices, and it's also listed on board docs. So that's the information I have. Jay, I don't know if you have anything else.
No, just remind everybody to sign up for on board on our Find Out First. You can sign up for the Board of Education notices, and you will get the email when the agenda is set on board docs to let you know what committees are meeting through the Board of Ed. So go to our Find Out First, sign up for Board of Education Find Out First, and you will get all notifications for all meetings.
Okay. Other questions or comments before we dismiss? All righty. Well, thank you very much for participating tonight, and I know it was kind of a little disjointed. We're still, like I said, we're building the airplane as we're trying to get it to take off. So, but things are getting better. I think we heard some good things tonight. I'm really looking forward to us making a difference. I hate to say this, but I went through this once before back in the '60s, so this is like deja vu all over again. So I have a distinct passion for this, as all of you who are on this, because you all volunteered to be on this. So I really appreciate you taking the time to participate. Everyone's voice will be heard. Don't hesitate to speak up. You know, I think we all have thick skins, and we want to make sure everything is right. So thank you very much for participating, and look for a survey to come out probably early next week. And we'll try to see when the best possible time for us all to get together again. And we're going to try to establish a permanent time, so a date and time, or day of the month time and time, so we can meet and have this. So we're all on the same page. Anything else for the good of the body? Well, thank you very much, Jay. If you stay on, Alyssa and Dawn, I appreciate it. And the rest of you, thank you very much for your participation. Be safe, take care of your families, and protect yourselves at all times. God bless you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank